Easy now.
Rejected Omega
This will
sheltered
help.
20 wolves in a cave.
You're gonna be just
By
fine.
morning, the Alpha King declared her Luna. At the edge of the cliffside, where the trees thinned and the ground dropped away into a shadowed valley, Saren ran, her bare feet slipping on the wet earth. Her heart pounded, not only from the storm but from the fear that had followed her all her life. She was an Omega, a girl born gentle and small in a world that valued strength, and the whispers of the village still haunted her. Weak, useless, unlucky. The path was treacherous, roots twisting like serpents underfoot, but Saren's eyes were fixed on a dim shape ahead, barely visible through the rain. A low whimper carried through the storm, faint but distinct. She froze, listening. Another sound followed, a soft yelp, then the low growl of pain. Her hands trembled, but she did not hesitate. For as long as she could remember, she had cared for the weak, the lost, the wounded. That instinct now guided her steps. As she drew closer, she saw them, 20 wolves, scattered across the rocky clearing, some trembling, some lying still, their eyes wide with fear and suffering. Rain plastered their fur to their bodies, and blood streaked the side of one small wolf pup. Saren's heart clenched. "Oh, you poor things," she whispered, kneeling beside them despite the cold. She touched one's head gently, and it flinched at first, then relaxed under her warmth. "I will help you," she promised, her voice soft but firm, carrying an authority born of determination rather than strength. The wolves eyed her warily. She could feel their suspicion, their instinct to fight or flee. But there was something else, a glimmer of recognition, almost reverence, as though they sensed she was different. She moved slowly among them, her hands working to pull away debris, clean wounds, and offer warmth. She could not bring them to the village. People there would only drive them away, perhaps kill them for fear or superstition. She needed a place of safety. Her mind raced, trying to remember every hollow, cave, and abandoned shelter she had ever seen. Then she remembered. The cave hidden at the base of the cliff, a place no one went, shrouded by the trees. Lifting the smallest, weakest wolves in her arms and urging the stronger ones to follow, Saren began the climb. The path was narrow, slippery, and jagged, but the wolves obeyed, their trust growing with every careful step. By the time she reached the cave, her clothes were soaked through, her body trembling from exhaustion and cold, but the relief that washed over her at finding the shelter was almost unbearable. Inside the cave, she laid out blankets she had brought and gathered moss and dry twigs to start a fire. The wolves watched her silently, their eyes reflecting the faint glow of the small flame. Some circled, uncertain but curious, while others huddled together, injured and scared. Saren moved among them, whispering encouragement, her touch gentle and sure. Hours passed. The storm outside raged, but inside the cave there was warmth and safety. Saren had worked tirelessly, cleaning wounds, feeding the wolves with small scraps she had carried in her bag, and murmuring comfort as if the sound of her voice alone could chase away the pain. It was then she noticed one wolf apart from the rest. Larger than the others, with fur dark as midnight and eyes that seemed to glow even in the flickering firelight. There was a nobility about him, a silent strength, but also a loneliness, a wound hidden beneath the surface. He watched Saren with intense focus, tilting his head as if testing her, as if weighing her heart. "You're not afraid of me," she said softly, kneeling a few feet from him. "That's brave or foolish." The wolf growled low in response, not in anger but as a warning, a boundary. Saren nodded, she understood. "I won't hurt you, I only want to help." She reached out her hand slowly, letting the warmth of the fire touch his fur. For a long moment he hesitated, then lowered his head slightly, a quiet acceptance. The fire crackled. The wind outside beat against the cave, but inside, for the first time in days, Saren allowed herself to breathe. She sat among the wolves, exhausted, her body aching but her heart full in a way it had never been before. She was not alone, not anymore. And yet, as dawn began to edge the sky with gray, a sudden tension rippled through the cave. The wolves stiffened, ears pricking, hackles rising. Saren's breath caught in her throat. Outside, she could hear the crunch of boots on wet earth, heavy, deliberate steps. Her heart raced. She knew immediately who it was before even seeing him, the Alpha King. Stories had reached even her secluded village, a ruler unmatched in strength, feared by all clans, with eyes like silver lightning and a presence that could bend wills. He came with his guards, each one as dangerous as the last. The wolves growled, forming a protective circle around Saren. She stood slowly, hands raised in peace, though fear threatened to root her to the ground. And then she saw him. Kale, the Alpha King himself, standing at the cave entrance, his cloak soaked, hair dark and windswept, eyes locked on her like a predator sizing up prey, but with a strange curiosity, a flicker of something she could not name. "You," he said, his voice low, commanding, yet not unkind. "You brought them here." Saren nodded. I couldn't let them die." Kale stepped closer, the ground trembling slightly under his presence. "Twisted, wounded creatures, and yet you cared for them." "That is unusual for an Omega," she swallowed hard. I only did what I could." He studied her, his gaze sharp, weighing, piercing into places no one had dared before, and then, without a word, he raised his head toward the sky. The wolves howled, 20 voices, rising in a chorus that echoed off the cliffs. Kale's eyes softened slightly, a flicker of awe crossing his face. "By the dawn you have shown courage and heart," he said. Then, startlingly, he declared, "This Omega belongs to me. She will be my Luna." Saren's knees weakened. She had heard of the title Luna, the mate of an Alpha King, a position of honor, danger, and destiny. Her mind spun with questions, fears, and disbelief. How could someone like her, an outcast, be chosen by someone so powerful? The wolves around her bristled, some stepping forward protectively. Kale's gaze swept over them, and they fell silent, bowing slightly, acknowledging his command. Saren realized then that her bond with the wolves had not gone unnoticed. Perhaps it was part of why he had chosen her. Her thoughts were a whirlwind, fear, awe, hope, and something else stirring deep inside. Curiosity, fascination, a flicker of desire she had never known before. The Alpha King, terrifying and commanding, had seen her for who she truly was, not as weak or unlucky, but as someone capable of courage and compassion. You don't understand," she said softly, shaking her head. "I am not ready. I am not anything like you." Kale's silver eyes softened just a fraction. "It is not a matter of readiness. It is a matter of fate, and fate has chosen you." A crack of thunder rolled across the valley as if the storm itself approved. The wolves' howls joined the sound, rising in harmony, strange and beautiful. Saren looked at Kale, at the man who could crush kingdoms yet had somehow seen the small, quiet strength in her. She felt a tremor of something powerful, fear, yes, but also the first hint of trust and perhaps even something like longing. Kale extended a hand toward her. "Come," he said, voice firm, yet not unkind. "We leave the cave. The wolves will follow, and you will see the world beyond this forest. The path will not be easy, but it will be yours to walk beside me." Saren hesitated, glancing at the 20 wolves who had trusted her, who now looked to her for guidance. Then she looked at Kale, at the storm in his eyes and the strange warmth beneath it. Slowly, trembling but determined, she placed her hand in his. As she stepped toward him, the first rays of the sun broke through the storm clouds, painting the forest in pale gold. And in that light, Saren felt the weight of her destiny settle over her shoulders, heavy and real, yet not unkind. The wolves followed, silent and reverent, as the Alpha King led his Luna out of the cave, into a world of shadows, storms, and promises that neither of them fully understood yet. And somewhere deep in the forest, the mysterious dark wolf watched from the shadows, his gaze lingering on Saren, as if marking the beginning of a bond that would shape kingdoms, hearts, and fates alike. The journey had begun, and by morning, nothing would ever be the same. The journey from the cliffside cave to the Alpha King's fortress was long and dangerous. Saren walked beside Kale, her hands still trembling from the events of the morning. The wolves followed in a silent procession, their eyes ever watchful, ears alert. Even as the forest receded, its shadows seemed to cling to them, whispering secrets and warnings. Kale rode a dark stallion, his cloak wet from the rain but flowing like liquid shadow behind him. He hardly spoke, yet his presence filled the path with an almost unbearable tension. Saren, though small and hesitant, walked with a quiet confidence, guiding the injured wolves with gentle hands. Every now and then, Kale's silver eyes flicked toward her, sharp and assessing, as though measuring her courage, her heart, and perhaps something else he could not name. The fortress appeared at dusk, towering above the jagged cliffs. Its spires reached into the stormy sky, black stone glinting wetly in the fading light. Lanterns flickered along the walls, casting long shadows that made the structure seem alive, watching, waiting. The gates opened silently as they approached, and Kale dismounted with the fluid grace of a predator. Saren followed, careful not to stumble, her hand brushing the hilt of the small knife she always carried. The wolves remained outside the main hall, obedient but tense. The guards, clad in dark armor, watched Saren with a mixture of suspicion and awe. News of the Luna chosen by the Alpha King traveled faster than she could imagine. Inside the fortress, the air was colder, heavier, carrying the scent of stone and iron. The hall stretched into darkness, lined with statues of past rulers, their faces frozen in stern judgment. Kale led her to a chamber lit by hundreds of candles, their flames dancing as if alive. Here, for the first time, Saren saw him without armor, without the mask of command. He was still imposing, broad-shouldered and powerful, but now she could see the loneliness in his eyes, the faint lines of pain etched into his face. He did not speak. He simply waited, allowing her to breathe in the strange, intoxicating air of his presence. "You will stay here," Kale said finally, his voice soft but carrying a weight that made her spine stiffen. "Tomorrow, the council will meet to discuss your role. You are my Luna now, whether you understand it or not. You will learn the ways of the court, of the clans, and of this fortress. You will also learn to walk in the shadows where others fear to tread." Saren nodded, swallowing hard. I will try," she whispered. Her voice sounded small in the cavernous hall. Kale studied her. "Try?" His brows lifted, questioning. "No, you will succeed. You must. I chose you because the path you will walk is not easy and only someone strong of heart can endure it. Not just anyone can be Luna." Even as he spoke, Saren felt the tension in the room, the unspoken power dynamic between them. Kale was Alpha King, dominant, commanding, dangerous. And she, an Omega, gentle and untested, had been thrust into his world. Fear warred with fascination in her chest, and something deeper began to stir. A curiosity about him, about his strength, and the mystery that seemed to surround every step he took. That night, Saren could not sleep. The wolves lay close to her chamber door, their quiet breathing a reminder of the responsibility she now carried. She walked to the balcony overlooking the jagged cliffs and the dark forest beyond. The wind whipped her hair around her face and the moonlight cast Kale's fortress in a silver glow, making it seem alive with secrets. Kale appeared behind her silently. She did not turn at first. "You do not sleep," he observed, his voice almost a whisper. I am thinking," she said softly, "about the wolves, about everything, about you." He stepped closer, the silver moonlight glinting in his eyes. "You are brave to speak so freely. Most would bow their heads in fear." Saren turned to him, her gaze meeting his. In that moment, the air between them was thick with tension. Not anger, not hostility, but something far more dangerous. An unspoken recognition, a pull neither of them could ignore. She felt her pulse quicken, her hands growing clammy. "You are," Kale began, then stopped. His eyes darkened, shadowed by a memory she could not see. I have never allowed myself to care for another, not fully, not in centuries." Saren blinked. "Centuries?" Kale's lips pressed into a thin line. Time does not matter to me as it does to others. My life has been long, my rule harsh. Bonds bring weakness, and yet, his eyes softened in a way that startled her. There is something in you, Saren, something I have not felt before. A shiver ran down her spine. She wanted to speak, to ask what he meant, but words failed her. Instead, she simply nodded, sensing the weight of his truth. The next day, the council gathered. Lords and elders, cloaked in dark furs and heavy robes, circled her like predators and prey. Whispers echoed through the hall. Some were curious, some suspicious, others envious. None dared openly challenge Kale, for his reputation alone was enough to silence fear. Saren, Kale addressed her, his voice echoing through the hall. You are Luna. You will learn our ways, our strengths, our secrets. You will heal, you will lead, and you will stand beside me. A murmur of surprise ran through the council. One elder, tall and gaunt, raised a hand. Your Highness, she is an Omega, gentle. How can she bear the burdens of your court? Kale's eyes glinted. Strength is not always measured by muscle or fangs. It is measured by courage, by heart. She has proven herself in ways none of you could. The council remained silent, uneasy but unable to argue further. Saren felt a flicker of pride, but it was tinged with fear. Could she truly stand beside the Alpha King? Could she live up to the destiny thrust upon her? Over the next days, she learned the ways of the fortress. She tended to injured soldiers, fed and cared for the wolves, and slowly began to understand the hierarchy, the subtle politics, and the unspoken rules. Every act of kindness, every quiet decision she made drew Kale's attention. He watched her constantly, sometimes from the shadows, sometimes at a distance, studying, always assessing. Kale's presence was both comforting and intimidating. There were moments when he would step close, his hand brushing hers as he pointed out a command or corrected her movements. Each touch sent a shiver through her, confusing her, making her heart race. She began to see glimpses of his loneliness, the weight he carried as Alpha King, and it made her long to reach him, to understand him, to be more than just the Luna he had chosen. One evening, Kale summoned her to the stables. The storm from days before had passed, leaving the night air crisp and clear. He handed her a dark cloak and gestured to the black stallion waiting nearby. You will ride with me tonight. There are matters that require your attention, matters that may not be safe for others. Saren mounted carefully, heart pounding. As they rode through the fortress gates into the forest beyond, Kale's eyes never left her. The wolves ran alongside them, silent and loyal. The forest seemed alive, shadows twisting, moonlight flickering through the branches like silver fire. They rode in silence for hours, the tension between them thick and electric. Finally, Kale halted at a clearing where the trees opened to reveal a mist-shrouded glen. He dismounted, turning to her. You must learn, he said, voice low, that my world is not safe, that it is filled with danger, and that love is not a guarantee of protection. Saren's heart tightened. I do not expect guarantees. I only wish to understand. To help, Kale studied her, his expression unreadable. Then, unexpectedly, he knelt before her, placing a hand over hers. You have courage, you have heart. That is why I chose you. Not just because fate demanded it, but because, his voice faltered then steadied. Because you are unlike any Omega I have ever known. The wolves circled them, eyes glowing in the moonlight, as if sensing the unspoken bond growing between them. Saren felt a warmth in her chest, a mixture of fear, hope, and longing. She wanted to speak, to ask him what he truly meant, but the moment was broken as a distant howl echoed through the forest, a sound both familiar and alien, a warning that danger was never far. Kale's jaw tightened. Stay close, he murmured. The world beyond these walls is harsh. We must be ready. Saren nodded, gripping the reins tightly. Though fear tugged at her, she felt a strange certainty deep within. This was where she belonged, beside him, amidst the shadows and storms. The path ahead would be difficult, filled with trials and choices she could not yet imagine. But for the first time in her life, she felt that she was not powerless. And as they rode back toward the fortress, the wolves following silently behind, Saren understood that the bonds of heart, courage, and destiny were stronger than fear, and that love, even in a world of shadows, could grow quietly, persistently, like a single candle fighting the dark. The forest beyond the fortress had always been spoken of in whispers and warnings. It was said to be haunted, alive with shadows that shifted with the wind, and spirits of wolves and warriors long gone. Yet Kale led Saren through it, his dark cloak blending with the night, his silver eyes scanning the trees for danger. "You must understand," he said quietly, "this forest is not just land, it is memory. It remembers pain, betrayal, and sorrow. It tests anyone who walks here, and it will test you." Saren nodded, her hand brushing against the hilt of her knife. Her heart raced, but she felt steady, strengthened by the wolves who ran beside them, silent and alert. She could feel their loyalty, their trust, and it filled her with courage she did not know she had. Kale rode silently for a while, then spoke, his voice softer, almost vulnerable. "I have carried a curse since I was born. It is not a simple enchantment. It is a shadow of my past, of my family, and of choices made before I existed. No one has been able to break it. Love brings danger, affection brings pain, and yet," he glanced at her, his gaze sharp and searching, "and yet somehow you are the first who may have the power to heal it." Saren's chest tightened. She had not imagined the weight of what it meant to be Luna. She had only wanted to help the wolves, to be a small force of kindness in a world that often had none. Yet now she understood that fate had chosen her for something far greater, far more dangerous. "Me," she whispered. I don't understand. How could I break a curse? I'm just an Omega. I've never." Her voice faltered. Kale's horse slowed and he looked at her with intensity. "Strength is not measured in power or in fangs or in centuries of rule. It is measured in heart, in courage, in the willingness to face fear without turning away. You have that, Saren. That is why you are here. That is why the curse may be broken by you and not by anyone else." Saren swallowed hard, her fear mingling with resolve. She could feel the wolves pressing close to her, their presence grounding her. Somehow they knew she would need them, and she would need to trust in herself more than ever before. The deeper they went into the forest, the stranger it became. Shadows twisted like living things, and the trees seemed to whisper secrets in voices only she could almost hear. Mist curled around their ankles, soft and cold, carrying with it scents of moss, rain, and something older, something ancient. Kale dismounted and gestured for her to do the same. "The first trial is not of the body," he said. "It is of the mind, of the heart. You must confront fear, loss, and doubt, and do so without turning away." Saren followed him to a small clearing. The mist thickened and shapes began to appear, indistinct, shadowy figures that seemed almost alive. She could hear whispers, faint at first, then louder, echoing in her mind. "You are weak, you will fail, you are nothing." Her knees shook, and for a moment she felt the weight of all the doubts she had ever carried pressing down on her. But then she heard the soft breathing of the wolves, felt Kale's presence behind her, and she remembered his words. "Strength is measured in heart." She took a deep breath and stepped forward. "I am not nothing," she said firmly, her voice carrying over the whispers. "I am Saren, and I will face this." The shadows swirled faster, pressing closer, shapes twisting into the faces of those who had doubted her, who had whispered cruel words in her youth. Panic tried to rise in her chest, but she steadied herself, thinking of the wolves, of Kale, and of the courage she had shown in the cave. She could not fail. Kale stepped beside her, silent support, his presence both comforting and powerful. "Do not turn away," he said. "You are stronger than your fear. You must see it, accept it, and move through it." Saren closed her eyes and focused. She imagined the wolves, the injured creatures she had saved, the warmth of the fire in the cave, and the steady hand of Kale at her side. Slowly the whispers lost their power. Slowly, the shadows began to dissolve, melting back into the mist. When she opened her eyes, the clearing was still, calm, and she stood taller than before. Kale nodded once approvingly. Good, that was the first step. You are ready to confront the second. The second trial was physical. They were led to a part of the forest where the trees were blackened, twisted as if burned long ago. A river of dark water ran through the middle, its surface slick and treacherous. Across it a glowing figure waited, a spectral wolf, its eyes bright with sorrow and anger. This wolf holds the essence of the curse, Kale explained. It is a reflection of my past, the pain I have carried, the loneliness I have endured. You must reach it, touch it, and accept it as part of me without fear. Saren's stomach twisted. The wolf was large, its form shifting, eyes full of anger, yet she knew she could not turn back. She adjusted her cloak, took a deep breath, and stepped forward. The wolves followed her, circling protectively, their low growls echoing off the twisted trees. The spectral wolf lunged, and for a moment fear froze her. But she remembered the cave, the injured wolves, the courage she had found within herself. She held out her hand, speaking softly. I am not afraid of you. I do not hate you. I will help you help him. The wolf paused, its form wavering, then slowly approached. Saren stepped closer, feeling a strange warmth, a pulse of life within the spectral form. She touched its fur, and a wave of energy passed through her, sharp and beautiful like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Kale stepped closer, his hand brushing hers, grounding her, giving her the courage to stay. Do not falter, he whispered. The wolf's eyes met hers, and in that moment she understood the pain, the sorrow, the loneliness that had weighed on Kale for centuries. She felt it in her bones, in her heart, and for the first time she did not flinch. She embraced it, accepted it, and slowly the spectral form dissolved into mist, leaving only the faint glow of silver light. Kale exhaled, a sound of relief mixed with awe. You did it. Few could face that and remain unbroken. You are stronger than I knew. Saren's chest heaved, exhaustion mingling with relief. She had faced fear, sorrow, and a shadow of centuries of pain, and she had survived. Yet as she looked at Kale, she saw a new shadow in his eyes, something darker, deeper, a fear that had not yet been conquered. The third trial would be the hardest. The forest grew darker, the trees taller and closer together, forming a labyrinth of shadows. Here, Saren would face herself, her deepest fears, her doubts, her most painful memories. Kale could not protect her here. She had to do this alone. You are ready, Kale said softly. But this trial, you must walk it alone. Trust in yourself, trust in your heart. I will wait for you on the other side. Saren nodded, though her hands shook. The wolves pressed close, sensing the gravity of the moment. She stepped into the labyrinth of shadows, the mist curling around her like living fingers. Shapes formed in the fog, whispering doubts, fears, and regrets. Every step tested her courage, her heart, her resolve. She saw the faces of those who had rejected her, laughed at her, and called her weak. She saw the injuries she had suffered in silence, the nights of loneliness, the moments of despair. Tears ran down her cheeks, but she did not stop. She spoke aloud, voice trembling but firm, I am not nothing. I am Saren, I am strong, I am worthy. The shadows twisted, writhing as if resisting her words. She faltered, stumbling, but then felt the warmth of Kale's presence, felt the silent support of the wolves, felt the courage that had carried her this far. She breathed deeply, straightened, and continued forward. Finally, she reached the center of the labyrinth. The mist cleared and she saw Kale waiting, his eyes filled with pride and something she could not yet name. She had done it. She had faced fear, sorrow, and doubt, and she had emerged stronger. Kale extended his hand. Saren took it, and in that moment the forest seemed to sigh, the shadows retreating, leaving only the soft glow of moonlight. The wolves circled them, howling, their voices carrying through the trees like a song of triumph. But even as relief filled the clearing, a distant howl echoed through the forest. It was not like the wolves, nor like the spectral form they had faced. It was sharp, unfamiliar and full of menace, a warning that danger still lingered, that trials were not yet over. Kale's jaw tightened. "We are not safe yet," he said quietly. "Something waits for us, and it is watching." Saren shivered, not from fear alone, but from the realization that their journey had only just begun. She had grown stronger, braver, and closer to Kale than ever before. But the world beyond the forest held shadows she had yet to face, and bonds she had yet to understand. The wolves howled again, circling the clearing protectively, as if pledging their loyalty for the challenges ahead. Saren looked at Kale, and for the first time she felt the depth of their connection, not just Alpha and Luna, but something far deeper, bound by courage, heart, and destiny. As they turned to leave the labyrinth, the distant howl echoed once more, sharper, closer, and filled with a promise that the next trial would be even greater, one that would test their hearts, their trust, and their bond like never before. And in that moment, Saren understood that to save Kale, to save herself, and to protect the wolves who had trusted her, she would have to face what she feared most, and perhaps even risk losing everything she had gained. Dawn broke over the jagged cliffs, spilling pale gold light across the fortress and the mist-covered forest. Saren stood at the edge of the balcony, her cloak catching the soft wind. The events of the past days, the storm, the cave, the trials in the cursed forest, still weighed on her, but she felt stronger, more certain of herself than ever before. Kale appeared silently beside her, his presence filling the space with warmth and authority. He did not speak at first. He simply looked at her, eyes reflecting the first rays of the sun, and for a moment the weight of centuries in his gaze softened into something almost human. "You have grown," he said finally, voice quiet but deep, "not just in courage, Saren, but in heart." Saren turned to him, a small smile on her lips. "I had help," she said softly. Her hand brushed against the hilt of her knife at her side. "From the wolves, from you, and from myself, I think." Kale's silver eyes softened further. "You faced what few could. You confronted fear, sorrow, and the shadow of my curse. And yet here you stand, unbroken." He stepped closer. "You have done what even I could not." Saren's chest tightened. The words carried weight, honor, and something more, trust. For the first time, she realized that Kale was not only testing her courage but also offering her his confidence, his respect, and his heart. "We must finish what we started," Kale said, turning toward the forest. "The curse still lingers, but the final trial awaits." Saren nodded, feeling the familiar pulse of the wolves around them. 20 pairs of eyes watched, loyal and unwavering. The wolves had followed her from the cave to the fortress, and now they would walk beside her one last time. The path led them to a hidden glen deep within the forest, where the trees arched overhead like ancient guardians. Moonlight shimmered through the leaves, casting silver patterns on the mossy ground. In the center of the glen was a pool of water, black as obsidian, reflecting the stars above. Kale dismounted and gestured for Saren to approach. "This is the heart of the curse," he said, his voice low. "The shadows here are not illusions. They are fragments of my past, pain, regret, betrayal. You must step forward, embrace them, and heal what has long been broken. Only then can we be free." Saren's hands trembled, but she stepped forward, guided by the trust in her heart and the loyalty of the wolves at her side. She looked at Kale, who stood silently, watching, waiting, giving her strength through his presence alone. As she neared the pool, shadows rose from the water, forming shapes of people and wolves long gone. They whispered in voices both gentle and harsh, carrying the echoes of Kale's centuries of pain. Doubt clawed at her, fear threatened to overwhelm her, but she remembered the lessons of the labyrinth, the courage she had found in the cave, and the bond she shared with the wolves. "I am not afraid," she said aloud, voice firm. "I accept your pain, your sorrow, your mistakes. You are not alone anymore." The shadows shifted violently, resisting her words, swirling around her like a storm. But she did not falter. She took a deep breath, reached out, and touched the water. A surge of energy passed through her, sharp and warm, and she felt the curse twisting, writhing, as if struggling against the light she carried within. Kale stepped forward, placing his hand over hers. "Together," he said, "we face this together." The connection between them pulsed, and for the first time, Kale's curse seemed to respond not with pain but with understanding. The shadows screamed, twisted, then began to dissolve, retreating into the pool. The wind stilled, the mist cleared, and the glen was bathed in soft silver light. Saren pulled her hand back, exhausted but triumphant. The wolves circled her, howling, their voices carrying like a song of victory through the forest. Kale looked at her, awe and something deeper in his gaze. "You have done it," he whispered. "The curse, it is broken." Saren's knees shook, and she sank to the ground, relief and exhaustion mingling. Kale knelt beside her, his hand brushing her hair from her face. "You saved me," he said softly. "Not with power, not with magic, but with your heart. You are extraordinary." Tears filled her eyes, but they were not of fear. They were of joy, pride, and a new understanding of what it meant to be Luna. She had been chosen not because of strength alone, but because of compassion, courage, and a heart willing to face darkness without turning away. Kale extended his hand, helping her to stand. Their eyes met, and in that gaze, centuries of pain, loneliness, and fear melted into something fragile, new, and powerful. Something neither had expected, but both had longed for: trust, connection, and a bond deeper than either could explain. The wolves howled once more, a chorus of approval and loyalty. They circled Kale and Saren, as if blessing the bond between Alpha and Luna. Saren reached out, touching Kale's hand, and felt a warmth, a reassurance, a promise that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. The journey back to the fortress was quiet but filled with unspoken understanding. The forest, once dark and menacing, seemed alive with a gentle light, guiding them, acknowledging the courage and love that had broken the curse. Inside the fortress, the council awaited. Whispers ran through the hall, eyes wide with awe. Kale's expression was calm, commanding, yet Saren noticed the softness in his eyes, the way he looked at her with something more than duty. "This Omega has proven herself," Kale said, voice echoing. "Not only as Luna, but as a leader, a healer, and a force of courage. She has faced trials none could endure and has emerged stronger than any could imagine. From this day forth she will stand by my side, not as weak or small, but as Luna, as my equal, and as the heart of our people." The council murmured, some bowing, some nodding reluctantly, but none dared challenge him. Saren's heart swelled, not with pride but with a quiet strength. She had earned her place, not by birth, not by chance, but by courage, compassion, and determination. Days passed, and the fortress settled into a new rhythm. Saren learned the intricacies of court life, the alliances and politics, and how to balance compassion with authority. Kale trained her in the ways of the Alpha, not to dominate, but to protect and guide. Their bond deepened with every shared glance, every touch, and every unspoken word. The wolves remained by their side, loyal and protective. They had grown stronger too, healed by Saren's care and the bond that connected all of them. At night they would sit together in the courtyard, watching the moon rise, the stars glimmering above, and the fortress alive with quiet, peaceful energy. One evening, under the full moon, Kale and Saren stood together on the highest balcony. The wind whipped around them, carrying the scent of the forest, the waves crashing below, and the faint scent of the wolves. "You have changed everything," Kale said softly. "Not just the curse, but me. I did not believe I could feel like this again." And yet, his eyes met hers, silver and deep. "Here I am, standing beside you, and I feel whole." Saren reached out, taking his hand. "We changed together," she said quietly. "I could not have done this alone, and neither could you." Kale pulled her closer, their foreheads touching lightly. "Then we face the future together," he whispered. A howl echoed from the forest below, not a threat, but a reminder that the world was wide, wild, and full of mysteries. Saren smiled faintly, feeling the excitement of what was yet to come. They had faced darkness, sorrow, and fear and emerged stronger. Yet the world held more challenges, more trials, and more wonders. But they would face it together. Luna and Alpha, heart and strength, bound by courage, trust, and love. As the moonlight bathed them in silver, the wolves circled below, loyal and vigilant. Saren looked down at them, then back at Kale. For the first time in her life, she felt truly at home, not just in a place, but in a life, a bond, and a destiny that she had chosen and earned. And somewhere deep in the forest, a new shadow moved, distant yet aware of their bond. A new adventure waited, yes, but for now the curse was broken, the bond was sealed, and love had found its way even in a world of shadows. The Alpha King and his Luna stood together under the moon, ready to face whatever the world would throw at them, stronger, united, and unafraid. The wolves howled one final time, a song of triumph, loyalty, and hope. And for Saren, Kale, and the creatures she had saved, the future was theirs to shape, filled with courage, love, and the promise of endless possibilities.